Syria 2014. The Syrian desert rushes beneath at 500 knots. No radar paints the skin. No warning receiver screams. To every sensor array scanning the darkness below, the sky is empty, nothing but stars and silence over Raqqa. But something is there. Inside the cockpit of Dagger 01, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin, Coach, Sutterfield feels the G-suit squeeze his legs as he banks the F-22 Raptor into its final attack vector. The heads-up display projects ghostly green numbers over the blackened earth below, altitude 25,000 feet, airspeed 520 knots, time to target 47 seconds. His left thumb hovers over the weapon's release. The aircraft doesn't shake. It doesn't buffet. It slices through the September night like a scalpel through silk. Below, in a compound that ISIS commanders believe is invisible to American eyes, fighters load weapons into trucks. They have no idea what's coming. Their cell phones still work. Their radios still chatter. Their anti-aircraft guns, decades-old ZSU-23s, point uselessly at empty sky. Sutterfield exhales. His finger tightens. Dagger 01, weapons away. A 500-pound GBU-32 JDM separates from the internal weapons bay with barely a whisper. The bay doors close in 1.2 seconds. The radar cross-section never changes. The bomb falls for 37 seconds in perfect silence. Then the earth below erupts in fire. It was the moment the world's most expensive fighter aircraft, $66.7 billion in development costs, nearly 2 decades of congressional battles, and countless critics demanding its cancellation, finally proved what it could do. September 22, 2014. The night the Raptor hunted. Not everything you've heard about this moment is correct. Some accounts exaggerate, others minimize the technological miracle unfolding over Syria. But the truth of what happened in those dark hours over the Islamic State's heartland is even more remarkable than the legends suggest. Because for the first time, America's invisible sword had drawn blood. By the summer of 2014, the Islamic State had become something the modern world had never seen, a terrorist organization that conquered territory like a conventional army. Their advance was terrifying in its speed. In June, 1,500 ISIS fighters routed 30,000 Iraqi soldiers in Mosul, a city of 2 million people fell in 4 days. By August, they controlled territory the size of Great Britain, stretching from Aleppo, Syria to Diyala province, Iraq. An estimated 35,000 fighters swore allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who declared himself caliph of a new Islamic empire. The atrocities were broadcast globally. Beheadings of American journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff. Mass executions of prisoners. Entire religious communities, Yazidis, Christians, Shia Muslims, facing genocide on Mount Sinjar. The black flags flew over ancient cities, and the world demanded action. Part B. The decision. Initially, American military planners considered conventional options: cruise missiles, B-1 bomber strikes, proven aircraft like the F-15E Strike Eagle. The F-22, despite being operational since 2005, remained controversial, a Cold War relic designed to fight Soviet MiGs, critics said, not insurgents in pickup trucks. But President Obama faced a unique problem: Syria. Bashar al-Assad's government possessed advanced Russian-supplied air defenses, SA-17 and SA-22 surface-to-air missile systems that could threaten conventional strike aircraft. Russian advisors operated alongside Syrian forces. Iran's Quds force moved freely through Damascus. Any aircraft entering Syrian airspace would face threats it wouldn't encounter over Iraq. The F-22 was designed precisely for this environment. On September 10, 2014, President Obama announced expanded airstrikes against ISIS in Syria. 12 days later, the Raptor would enter combat for the first time in its existence, and nothing would ever be the same. The strategic challenges facing American planners in September 2014 seemed designed to create the most complex air combat environment since Vietnam. Syrian airspace was not a sanctuary. It was a trap. Assad's integrated air defense system featured over 800 surface-to-air missiles of various types, including the deadly S-200V, SA-5 Gammon, with a 300-kilometer range, and the mobile SA-17 Grizzly systems that had already proven capable of downing advanced aircraft. Russian technicians maintained critical radar networks. Intelligence suggested Syrian operators had standing orders to engage any aircraft violating their airspace, regardless of target. But here was the dilemma: ISIS's headquarters, training camps, and command nodes weren't in Iraq. They were in Raqqa, Syria, the self-proclaimed capital of the Caliphate. The generals at CENTCOM understood a fundamental truth: you cannot defeat an enemy you cannot strike at its heart. Tensions were high as Air Force planners at the Combined Air Operations Center at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, studied the problem. F-15Es could deliver munitions, but their radar signatures meant Syrian radar operators would track them from the moment they crossed the border. F-16s lacked the range without tanker support that would create additional vulnerabilities. Navy F divided by a -18s faced similar limitations. The answer was already sitting at Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. The 27th Fighter Squadron's 12 F-22A Raptors, deployed since August under the unit's Fighting Eagles designation. Their radar cross-section, the size of a marble on enemy screens. Their sensor fusion, capable of detecting, tracking, and engaging multiple threats simultaneously while remaining invisible. Their combat radius, 1,100 kilometers without external tanks. It was the best possible solution. It was America's only hope for striking Syria without starting a war with Assad, Russia, or Iran. The mission was classified top secret/NOFORN. On September 21, the orders came down. The Raptors would fly. At Al Dhafra Air Base, 40 miles from Abu Dhabi, the maintainers of the 380th Air Expeditionary Wing worked through temperatures exceeding 115 degrees Fahrenheit. The F-22 was notoriously maintenance-intensive. Its radar-absorbing skin required constant care. Every panel, every seam, every rivet head had to maintain the aircraft's stealth profile. The specialized coatings degraded in the Gulf's brutal humidity and sand-laden air. Crew chiefs worked 16-hour shifts ensuring each aircraft's low observable (LO) properties remained combat-ready. For the pilots of the 27th Fighter Squadron, the weight of history pressed down like the desert heat. Lieutenant Colonel Sutterfield, the mission commander, gathered his flight leads in the classified briefing room. The walls displayed satellite imagery of target compounds in Raqqa, Aleppo, and Deir-ez-Zor, command centers, weapons depots, training facilities where foreign fighters learned the art of terror. "Gentlemen," Sutterfield began, "tonight we're going to prove everything we've trained for." The intelligence packages were extensive. ISIS had positioned anti-aircraft artillery around key sites, though nothing that could touch aircraft at 25,000 feet. The real concern was the unknown: Syrian radar coverage, potential Russian monitoring, the fog of war in the world's most complicated battlespace. 14 pilots were assigned to the opening strikes. Each understood the stakes, not just the mission success, but the F-22 program itself. A decade of criticism hung over them. Senator John McCain had called the Raptor an incredible waste of money. Defense analysts questioned why America needed a $143 million fighter when enemies drove Toyota Hiluxes. Tonight would answer every critic. If something goes wrong, Sutterfield told his pilots, we adapt. We overcome. But nothing goes wrong. Not tonight. The pre-flight brief concluded at 1900 local. By 2100, the first aircraft would launch. Al Dhafra was chaos organized to precision. Fuel trucks moved between hardened aircraft shelters. Weapons loaders secured GBU-32 Joint Direct Attack munitions, 500-pound GPS-guided bombs, into the F-22's internal bays. Each aircraft carried 2 dams and a full complement of air-to-air missiles, though the latter were insurance policies no one expected to need. In the maintenance hangars, crew chiefs ran final checks on the ALR-94 electronic warfare suite, the most sophisticated threat detection system ever installed in a fighter aircraft, capable of tracking enemy radars from 250 nautical miles away. Radar-absorbing material was inspected with handheld meters. Any anomaly could increase the aircraft's signature from marble to baseball, still small, but potentially detectable. The F-22s and APG-77 radar represented another tactical advantage. Operating in low probability of intercept mode, it could map ground targets and detect airborne threats without revealing the aircraft's presence. Syrian air defense operators would be searching for exactly the kind of emissions the Raptor was designed to minimize. The first aircraft taxied at 2047 local time. Imagine being an ISIS commander that night in Raqqa, confident in the distance from American carriers, assured that Assad's air defenses would provide warning of any strike. Imagine believing you were safe because no rational enemy would risk war with Syria and Russia to hit desert compounds. Imagine not knowing that death was already airborne. At 21:15, 4 F-22s climbed into the darkness over the Persian Gulf, turned northwest toward the Syrian border, and disappeared from the world's radar screens. Only time would tell if 20 years of engineering would survive its first test of fire. ISIS leadership had studied American airpower with the diligence of insurgents who had survived a decade of drone strikes and Apache helicopters in Iraq. They understood the limitations. Surveillance platforms took time to find targets. Precision strikes required real-time intelligence. Coalition aircraft could be tracked, and warning networks, cell phone chains, observation posts, could give fighters minutes to disperse before bombs arrived. Against F-15s and Predator drones, these methods worked. Against the F-22, they were useless. The Raptor's mission planners exploited this arrogance. While ISIS commanders watched for the familiar signatures of American air operations, AWACS radar patterns, tanker orbits, the electronic emissions of conventional strike packages, the F-22s approached through invisible corridors. No warning calls came from Syrian radar operators. No observation posts reported aircraft noise. The Raptors flew so high, so fast, and so quiet that ground observers couldn't hear them even if they looked directly overhead. Colonel David Whip Graber, commander of the 27th Fighter Squadron, later described the philosophy. "We're not just going to knock on the door. We're already inside your house before you know we exist." Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had promised his followers that their caliphate would endure for centuries. He had not planned for ghosts. First engagement. At 0330 local time on September 23, 2014, the first bombs fell. The initial wave targeted a carefully curated list, ISIS command and control nodes, communications centers, and a facility where foreign fighters received training before deploying across the region. Navy Tomahawk missiles struck simultaneously from destroyers and cruisers in the Red Sea and Persian Gulf, overwhelming any air defense response. But the F-22s operated on a different tier. Their targets were hardened structures, buildings ISIS believed were protected by their proximity to civilian areas or by intelligence assessments that they were unknown to American surveillance. The GPS-guided dams required no laser designation, no terminal guidance from vulnerable ground controllers. The pilot released, the aircraft's navigation systems calculated, and the bomb flew itself to coordinates accurate within 3 meters. The first wave of F-22 strikes destroyed 22 targets across eastern Syria. Intelligence assessments later confirmed the elimination of senior ISIS operatives, foreign fighter coordinators, and a weapons depot containing surface-to-air missiles intended for eventual use against coalition aircraft. Not a single F-22 was detected. For 18 years, critics had insisted the F-22 would never prove its worth. The aircraft's development had been plagued by betrayals, not of men, but of political will. The program that began in 1986 as the Advanced Tactical Fighter competition had survived the Cold War's end, budget crises, and relentless opposition from lawmakers who questioned its mission. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates had truncated the production run in 2009, limiting the Air Force to 187 aircraft instead of the planned 750. The F-22 has not performed a single mission in Iraq or Afghanistan, Gates said, defending the cuts. The criticism stung because it was accurate. Despite a decade of conflict, the Raptor had never fired a shot in anger. Some accused the Air Force of cowardice, of protecting its expensive toy while F-15s and F-16s shouldered the burden. Others claimed the aircraft was simply too delicate for combat, its maintenance requirements unsuited to expeditionary operations. Now, over Syria, those accusations burned away like morning fog. But new vulnerabilities emerged even in victory. The F-22 lacked a targeting pod for close air support. It was designed to kill other fighters, not locate insurgents hiding among civilians. Its communication systems used data links optimized for air-to-air engagements, not the real-time coordination required for supporting ground forces. As Operation Inherent Resolve expanded, these limitations would require adaptation. The Raptor could dominate Syrian airspace, but it could not, alone, defeat ISIS. Luck had carried the opening night. Sustaining the campaign would demand more than stealth. In the days following September 23, the F-22s returned repeatedly to Syrian skies. The mission evolved. No longer merely bomb droppers, the Raptors became the eyes of the coalition air campaign, using their powerful sensors to detect and track threats, then sharing that data with less stealthy aircraft following behind. By November, the statistics spoke for themselves: over 150 sorties flown, 0 aircraft lost, 0 aircraft damaged. The F-22 had achieved something unprecedented: sustained combat operations inside contested airspace without a single maintenance abort or combat casualty. Some critics remained unmoved. "It's dropping dumb bombs on pickup trucks," one analyst sneered. "A $143 million aircraft doing work a Cessna could handle." The pilots knew better. On November 5, 2014, an F-22 conducting routine patrol detected an unfamiliar radar signature approaching Syrian airspace from the north. The pilot's threat display identified it: a Russian Air Force surveillance aircraft, probing coalition operations. The Raptor tracked the Russian for 27 minutes without being detected. Intelligence officers later analyzed the encounter, confirming their greatest hope: even Russia's most advanced sensors could not see the F-22. This was the victory that mattered. Not the bombs dropped on ISIS compounds, but the demonstrated ability to operate with impunity inside defended airspace. The aircraft designed to defeat the Soviet Union had proven it could defeat the Soviet Union's airs. Colonel Graeber summarized the campaign's lesson: "We have changed the calculus of air warfare. Every nation with advanced air defenses now knows they cannot hide from us. They cannot track us. They cannot stop us." The F-22's performance over Syria silenced most critics. Commanders who had felt secure in their Raqqa headquarters relocated constantly, never sleeping in the same location twice. "They call it the ghost plane," one intercepted communication noted. Syria stopped the arguments about the Raptor's relevance for exactly 3 years, 7 months, and 14 days, until a new generation of critics emerged during budget battles. But the precedent had been established. The 20,000 coalition airstrikes that followed in Operation Inherent Resolve were possible because the F-22 had proved the battle space could be opened. The liberation of Mosul in 2017, the destruction of ISIS's territorial caliphate in 2019, the elimination of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi himself, all of it traced back to the nights when invisible aircraft taught a terrorist army that distance was no protection. Without those September strikes, ISIS would have had months to fortify, recruit, and expand. The caliphate might have consolidated its grip on 6 million people. The genocide of Yazidis might have succeeded entirely. Instead, the Raptor hunted. The victories at Kobani and Tikrit and Ramadi followed because American air power could go anywhere, at any time, and kill with impunity. The F-22 had proven the doctrine that would define 21st century warfare: stealth is not a feature, it is the foundation. Today, the F-22 Raptor remains the world's preeminent air superiority fighter. At the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, visitors can view the first production Raptor, serial number 91-4001, which flew its maiden flight on September 7, 1997. At Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, the first fighter wing continues to train pilots for the aircraft that proved itself over Syria a decade ago. The pilots of the 27th Fighter Squadron returned home to quiet ceremonies and classified awards. Their names remain largely unknown, their mission still guarded by classification markings. But their legacy is written in the skies they made safe, and in the silence that followed their passage. For more on Operation Inherent Resolve and the evolution of fifth-generation air combat, subscribe to this channel.